Welcome back. You're watching 101. We're speaking with retired US General Anthony Zinni. So you saw service on many fronts, from Vietnam to Somalia, pretty much everything in between as well. To the outsider, at least, it seems like the US doesn't seem to learn from its sort of military mistakes. Afghanistan and Iraq are being talked about in the same way that Vietnam was. Why is that?
Well, I think unfortunately or fortunately, our political leadership changes often. And that's good in a way. We certainly don't have people in power for long periods of time. That's not the way our country was founded. And unfortunately, people that haven't been through that experience have to relearn the lessons. I think our political leaders, now that we have an all-volunteer military, we have less and less in our Congress and elsewhere that have actual military experience. I think even in the ranks, even our uniformed people tend to forget the lessons of the past. And to a degree, we have to relearn those. I think now you have officers that are senior leaders in the military that don't have the Vietnam experience that sort of forged us as young officers. The young officers I teach today are having that forging take place, and that will help them in the future, I think, understand conflict.
Did it ever really bother you that the justification for going into Iraq, for example, it never really appeared in the end, with no signs of weapons of mass destruction? Of course, it was a military man who effectively gave the green light, General Powell.
Yeah. Well, of course, I opposed the intervention in Iraq for a number of reasons. First of all, I thought Saddam was contained. I was responsible for the containment. I really felt that he was not a threat to anybody. No one in the region, the friends I had, the leaders there, felt we had him successfully contained, and effectively with less troops than report to the Pentagon every day for work. I also believed he did not have a WMD program. There was no clear evidence of that, and I saw the intelligence in the end. I think that we realized in the end that wasn't there. I also think the intervention, there was a naive belief that it would be a cakewalk. We would get flowers in the streets, and certainly anybody that knew the region knew that wasn't going to happen. So it was done with too few troops. Some terrible decisions made. Disbanding the army, debathification, closing state-owned factories, putting people out of work. I mean, a series of horrific mistakes, beginning with too few troops to control the situation and control the borders and do other things that you needed to do with a society that was going to fragment and come apart by its very nature.
Has the image of the U.S. military and America in general, in your eyes, suffered severely because of theaters of conflict such as Afghanistan and Iraq?
Yeah, it can't help but have it happen. Vietnam was probably the worst because people began to blame the military for the involvement. It went from being an anti-Vietnam to an anti-war to an anti-military. At least in the United States, they haven't taken it out on the military. They've obviously objected to the political decisions and the mistakes that were made, but they haven't blamed the soldier for that. That's healthy, and in that sense, it's good. But you can't help but be tainted by missions that either fail or missions that the rationale for it turns out not to be there. We know the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam. Those things affect the military because we are basically not subjects of the king or the queen. We are citizen soldiers. We swear an oath to the Constitution, not to an individual. We're the sons and daughters of our citizens and not the subjects. And so it's a different environment when you commit the military in a democracy like ours.
Looking at the variety of things you've done, it's a huge range. Are you able to pick out any defining moments, things that really stick in your mind?
Well, obviously the military career, I think there are certain events in there, not only conflict, but I was involved in a number of humanitarian missions with the Kurds in the north. And even the beginning of Somalia, when I first went in, it was a humanitarian mission. And you think about lives you saved, those things impress you the most, and those things make you feel the best in what you do. Afterwards, I spent some time working for various administrations on peace missions, mediation missions, which I really enjoy. They're not always successful, but sometimes you buy time, you save a few lives. Sometimes you actually get something done, and there's peace, or you prevent conflict. I was involved with the incident in Kargil with the Pakistanis and the Indians. I think we did, under the Clinton administration, prevent war. We certainly tried with the Israeli and Palestinian. I think some lives were probably saved, but in the end, like the other envoys, couldn't quite bring it about. Those things, I think, have great appeal to me. I love to teach. I'm a professor at Cornell now. I've had 9 chairs at universities. I love the young people. They inspire you, and they're eager to learn. And I think there are lessons that I've learned, both from good events and bad events, that are worth passing on, and they're eager for that kind of knowledge and understanding. So that pleases me greatly at this stage of my life, along with 7 grandkids.
Of course, your profile built well, and you were pegged actually earlier in 2009 to be the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, which fell through. It went to Christopher Hill in the end. Was there any particular reason?
To this day, I don't know. I was never told. I was never told I didn't have the. I was told to get ready and to go by the Secretary of State, the Vice President, the National Security Advisor, and certainly was preparing to go. And then accidentally found out, had I not pressed the National Security Advisor, that I wasn't the selection, and no explanation as to why to this day.
Does it feel sometimes like a thankless task? You know, you've come out of the military where you're pretty much having to do the politician's bidding to some degree. Obviously, you do take a stand. But to some degree, do you feel it's thankless?
Well, you know, I wouldn't say it's thankless. I mean, I'm willing to serve. It's not easy. I mean, certainly it would have been a heck of a lot lower payday to be the ambassador than other things I was doing. But I think you have a sense of service, a sense of obligation to your country. And so when your country calls on you, if someone decides they want you, I feel, you know, I would want to do that for my country. It's now in my blood. If they decide not to, that's fine too. I don't like the politics wrapped around it, but I certainly like the service. And if you can do some good, I mean, being the ambassador to Iraq might have meant that I would have been involved in the obviously withdrawal of the combat troops, stabilizing the country more, helping the government get on its feet, providing economic and other incentives so that poor society that's been through hell can obviously right itself in some way. And that would have been fulfilling, I think.
Of course, you have to deal with the top political leaders in the US, but of the politicians you meet, the world leaders, the heads of state you meet outside, who's left their mark on you?
Well, a number of people. I mean, I met, the other day I was actually counting heads of state, and I think I've met something like 35 or close to 40 in my time. They're very different, obviously. You meet authoritarian leaders, you meet people that obviously are superb leaders, people respond to them. And the one thing I found is you can't make a judgment just based on the kind of government. I mean, obviously, we believe in democracy and representative government very strongly. But I found some leaders in the Middle East that were charismatic, that people loved them, that they were responsive to their people's needs. Just a small incident. The first time I met Sheikh Zayed from the UAE, and Sheikh Mohammed, his son, and I were very close, and it took me to see his father. And I was sitting there with his father, and I noticed under the table in front of him were all these bottles of water. And some of them looked cloudy and dirty and muddy and all. And I was kind of looking at them, and Sheikh Mohammed gave me an elbow and says, "You're looking at the water, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, what is that?" And he says, "My father has the water from all the wells brought to him, and he drinks them because he will drink the water his people drinks to make sure it's okay, and that the water is fine for them." And you know what the value and importance of water in the Middle East and in the desert. But some small thing like that, you know, to me says something about what was in his heart, you know, how he cared for his people. And I met a number of leaders that had that kind of contact and caring about their people that impressed me.
What about your own mentors? Who's been a mentor to you?
Well, obviously, you know, within the military, I've had you know, former generals, like these names may not mean anything to you, but General Al Gray was one of our commandants. General Mick Traynor was my commander in Vietnam, and a number of others who were military. I certainly am very close to people like General Powell, and the privilege of serving with him. I have a great deal of respect for him. So there have been a number of people, most in later life were military. I think of my early days, my older brother, my father, they were my heroes. You know, I just believe that that was tremendous courage. Probably most of all, I respect my little grandmothers, who were probably 5 feet tall, that had no education, grew up in very remote villages, and had the courage to take the brood, round them up on their own, bring them to a port, steerage class, arrive at places like Ellis Island and elsewhere, and start a whole new life. I think that took tremendous courage on their part.
What would you like your legacy to be, General?
I hope I've never, ever became impressed with myself. I hope I've never come across as someone that took pride just in the titles given. I love being around people. I've been around other people, leaders, that genuinely care, as I said before, about people and want to make them fulfill their dreams, help them in some way. And I hope along the way, I've helped some people. not only those that I've been responsible to lead, but where I've been committed to provide a better way of life, to help save lives. And so I hope the legacy is that people realize that I wanted to do good, and I wanted to leave people better off than when I first got there in some small way.
General Zinni, thank you very much.
Thank you, Riz.
Thank you.